Hey guys, I know it's been like over 3 months since the Oscars, but I'm still going to commit to this series of videos that I do every year where I look at all the categories and the nominees for the Academy Awards of this year. I also figured now would be a good time to revisit these movies because now it's summer for us here in the Philippines and I know that a lot of my friends haven't caught up on a lot of the nominees, so now's your chance. And first we're going to look at the nominees for Best Visual Effects. And the way this is going to work is that I'm going to bring up the nominees, talk about who I think should have won, so my votes, and then talk about who my official vote was and eventually who won the Oscar in the end. So without further ado, the nominees for Best Visual Effects were Ex Machina, Mark Williams Ardington, Sarah Bennett, Paul Norris, and Andrew Whitehurst. Mad Max Fury Road, Andrew Jackson, Dan Oliver, Andy Williams, and Tom Wood. The Martian, Anders Langlands, Chris Lawrence, Richard Stammers, and Stephen Warner. The Revenant, Richard McBride, Matt Shumway, Jason Smith, and Cameron Waldbauer. And Star Wars The Force Awakens, Chris Corbould, Roger Guyett, Paul Kavanagh, and Neil Scanlon. First of all, I really just have to say that this list of nominees this year was great. Like, I really was impressed by all of the visual effects in all of these movies. So in terms of who I think should have won, I usually put it in a ranking. So in 5th place, last place unfortunately, I'm going to put Ex Machina. But I was really super happy when I heard that Ex Machina was nominated because it's just like the little movie that could. It's such a small film and I'm so happy it was recognized by the Academy because it is a great movie. And I'm pretty sure it was nominated solely because of Ava, who is the character that Alicia Vikander plays. And really, she's such an impressive CGI, half CGI creation. Like, bringing her to life was really such an achievement. I think Ava is a great example for how visual effects can enhance a performance. You believe her so much that you end up, you know, as an audience member, challenging whether or not you consider her to be more human than robot or more robot than human. And there's just so much detail when you look at Ava. I mean, you can kind of see through her body and she has like a spinal structure there and her arms are detachable and stuff. And all of these little details are really help you understand that she is the end result of years and years worth of research and progress done by Oscar Isaac's character. But I put Ex Machina in last place ultimately because I think the visual effects here, while they're impressive, are just a bit too sparse throughout the movie. I mean, I didn't leave the movie really thinking to myself like the visual effects were great. I was thinking about how good the story was and how good the direction was and whatnot. And I found some of the other effects on some of the other androids to be not necessarily up to par. At 4th place, I'm going to put The Martian. And The Martian continues the tradition of depicting photorealistic space in a sci-fi movie after Gravity and Interstellar. And again, like the space stuff in The Martian really looks like they went up to space and filmed there. Everything that happens in and around the Hermes, I believe is named the ship, it feels real. But the main event in The Martian definitely is Mars itself. Thanks to the visual effects, I feel like the planet does become its own character, and I think there's real artistry in how they chose to depict the planet. Because at first when you're there and you have that whole storm that strands Mark Watney on Mars, like it's depicted as something that's dangerous and really kind of scary. But throughout the rest of the movie, they depict Mars as some place that's kind of beautiful and really like a sanctuary, which I think reflects well the personality of Mark Watney and how he chooses to be optimistic about the situation. But I put it in 4th place because the bulk of the visual effects in The Martian are environmental in nature, which is definitely not a bad thing at all. It's just that all the other nominees for me like really did wonders with moving objects and characters. Now these last 3 were really tough for me, but at 3rd place I'm gonna put The Revenant. And like Ex Machina, I feel like The Revenant was nominated solely because of the bear, and it really deserves that nomination because up to today, I still don't really know how they filmed that scene. I mean, I know I read somewhere that it had to do with like 2 guys in mocap suits and they were there as the bear, but watching the scene and its execution, like I just can't imagine how they pulled it off. I mean, I would much more readily believe that they got an actual bear to maul Leonardo DiCaprio. Yes, there is some CGI throughout the rest of The Revenant, especially that scene where Hugh Glass goes off a cliff with his horse. But the bear really is the single most memorable thing about the film. Like, whenever you watch The Revenant, it's the bear that's like the main event. And it's seriously almost such a milestone for me in CGI because the way it interacts with Leonardo DiCaprio, the way it interacts with the environment, it just feels so flawless that what it does is it enhances reality. You know, even if you've never seen a bear maul someone before, you believe it because you're seeing it on screen. But I'm putting The Revenant in third place because it ultimately is just one small part of a very long movie. It's still definitely gonna go down in history as one of the great CGI created characters in film history. Now at second place, I'm going to put Star Wars The Force Awakens. And here's the thing, like I said, all the nominees this year were great. But while I was watching The Force Awakens, I never once thought to myself that, this wasn't CGI. I just, from the very moment the movie started, I just believed every single place I was in. I believed every single thing that was in front of me. I didn't question it at all. And this is a really big feat when you consider that there's so much CGI stuff happening in Star Wars The Force Awakens, but it's just so seamless. Every single environment and planet you're on, you believe you're there. The dogfights are just glorious. It's so good to see lightsabers again, and especially like Kylo Ren's lightsaber, I really like because it feels dangerous. It feels like it's about to, explode in his hand. But what makes Star Wars The Force Awakens extra special, I think, is that it mixes all the CGI work with a ton of practical effects, and the way these two things interact again is just really, really seamless. Admittedly, Maz Kanata and Snoke aren't the best rendered CGI characters ever, but again, they're such small parts of the movie that they don't really bother me that much. Oh, and I forgot to mention that my favorite visual effect in the movie is probably the Millennium Falcon, because number one, it's just great to see the Falcon again, and number two, it feels older and more beat up, but it's still the fastest ship in the galaxy. And at number one, I'm going to put Mad Max Fury Road, and I really did think it deserved it, because the thing is, everyone kept talking about how there's so many practical effects in Mad Max Fury Road, and for me it deserves it because people don't realize that there is so much CGI and visual effects happening in the background that have to do with superimposition and coloring, but it's not in your face at all. The biggest visual effects sequence in the movie is the lightning storm, which is still totally impressive in its chaos and stuff, but it's the subtler things that really, really push this over the edge for me. Just the way they render this world and this wasteland is so subtle that, you completely buy into it. And of course, the practical effects and the stunts are amazing. They're ridiculous. It might disappoint some people to realize that they didn't actually shoot in an expanse of desert as big as what's seen on film, but it's still impressive because most of the mountains aren't there. A lot of that desert isn't actually there as well. It's all digitally added on, and what it does, it makes us feel the desolation, that the atmosphere of being in this world. And really, that's just what some of the best visual effects should do, is convince us that we are in this living, breathing world, and it makes us feel the heat, makes us feel tired, and it's just a great, great accomplishment. In the end, though, I ended up predicting that Star Wars The Force Awakens would take the Oscar because the Oscars usually give the award to the movie with the flashiest effects. But I was proven wrong, and it did not go to Mad Max Fury Road, but it went to my fifth place, Ex Machina, which really surprised me, but I was still really happy for them because, like I said, they're like the movie that could. I mean, it was super nice to see this little indie high-concept sci-fi thing beating out, the big franchise movie that had a lot of publicity going in terms of its visual effects and its practical effects. So it was a pretty surprising year for visual effects. So yeah, those were my thoughts on this year's Best Visual Effects category for the Oscars. Who do you guys think should have won? What do you think about the nominees this year? Whatever you thought, whether you agree with me or not, please leave me a comment. Let's have a conversation.